The music filled the room, soft, familiar, and comforting, until the shuffle stopped on a song I didn't recognize. I paused, confused for a moment. It was one of those smooth, aching love songs, the kind that made you close your eyes and think of someone you could never quite reach. But as the lyrics poured through the speakers, I realized this wasn't just another slow ballad from the mix of our shared Spotify account, it was a secret. The song was hers, but not for me. The words hit like a punch in the gut, and as the song played on, I knew that nothing would ever be the same between us again. I had always thought of our shared Spotify account as a symbol of our closeness. We had been together for years, and music was always something we enjoyed together. Whether it was a late-night kitchen dance or a lazy Sunday morning with coffee and the radio in the background, our playlists were a soundtrack to our shared life. So, when the app alerted me that a new song had been added to our library, I had no reason to be suspicious. I assumed it was another one of our mutual favorites, maybe something from the new album she'd been talking about. But when I saw the name of the track, a cold chill ran through me. The song was Don't Go, a deep, soulful ballad by an artist I didn't recognize. It was the kind of song you played when you were aching for someone, the kind of song that made your chest feel tight with longing. It wasn't a song I would have picked, and certainly not one I thought she'd add to our shared account. I checked the timestamp and realized that she had played it just last night, long after I had gone to bed. A wave of unease washed over me as I tried to rationalize it. Maybe she was listening to it because of a friend's recommendation. But no, something about the way the song sounded, the lyrics, the emotion behind it, it was meant for someone else. I sat there, staring at the screen, unable to press play. I couldn't bring myself to hear it again. The first time it had filled the room, it had seemed innocuous, a harmless melody that drifted through the air. But now that I knew its context, now that I knew what it meant, I felt as though I was hearing it with a different ear. The words felt like they were written for someone she was thinking of when she closed her eyes, someone who wasn't me. I needed to know more. I opened the app and went through our recent playlists. One after another, they were filled with songs that had made up the soundtrack of our relationship, songs from our first date, songs we'd danced to in the kitchen, songs we'd played during long road trips together. But nestled in between those tracks was a series of other songs I didn't recognize, songs that seemed foreign to the music I knew she liked. They all had one thing in common, an aching, soulful longing, as though they were messages meant for someone else. I wasn't stupid. I wasn't naive. I knew this wasn't a coincidence. These weren't random tracks added in passing, they were intentional. Each song felt deliberate, chosen with care. I could feel it in the weight of the melodies, the way they lingered in the silence after they ended. And I couldn't help but wonder, who were these songs meant for? Who was the person she was pouring this emotion into when she thought I wasn't listening? My heart began to race. I hadn't been prepared for this. How could I have been? I thought we were solid, built on trust and years of shared experiences. But this? This was a betrayal, quiet, subtle, but undeniable. The person she had been when she was with me didn't exist in the same space as the person she was when she listened to these songs. It felt like a crack in the foundation, a shift I couldn't ignore. I tried to ignore it. I tried to tell myself that maybe I was overthinking things. After all, it was just music. Maybe she had just liked the rhythm, the melody. But the more I played the songs in my mind, the more I realized that there was a narrative hidden in each note, a story I wasn't part of. I wondered how long it had been going on. How many other songs had been added in secret, slipped into our shared space like little whispers of a life I didn't know about. Her footsteps approached the room, and I hastily closed my phone, pretending to focus on something else. She walked in with that familiar smile, the one that had always made my heart swell. But today, it felt distant. There was a subtle hesitation in her eyes, something I couldn't quite put my finger on, but it was there, like she was waiting for something, expecting something. She sat beside me, and we exchanged the usual pleasantries, but the words felt hollow. The weight of the songs, those songs that didn't belong to me, hung in the air like an invisible barrier between us. So, she said casually, looking over at me, I added a few songs to our playlist last night. I've been really into some new artists lately. Her voice was light, but I could hear the faintest tremor, the slightest edge in her tone that told me she knew something was different. She was trying to act normal, trying to cover up something she knew I'd noticed. I smiled weakly, pretending I hadn't seen the song in our shared playlist. Yeah, I said, keeping my voice neutral. I noticed. Some of these are different. She looked at me, an eyebrow raised. Different how? I hesitated, trying to find the right words. How could I even explain it? How could I tell her that those songs didn't belong to me, that they didn't belong in our shared space, that they had made my chest ache with a feeling I couldn't place? I don't know. Just, different from what we usually listen to, I finally said, hoping she wouldn't push further. She nodded, but there was an unmistakable flicker in her eyes. She could sense my unease. I guess I've just been in a mood lately, she said with a slight laugh, brushing it off like it was nothing. You know, work stress, everything. Music helps me unwind. Yeah, I get that, I muttered, though I wasn't sure I did. Music had always been something we shared, but now it felt like it had become a secret, a language that was no longer ours. She continued talking, but I wasn't really listening. I couldn't tear my mind away from the songs. I kept thinking about the messages behind them, the lyrics that seemed to tell a story I wasn't part of. I tried to push it aside, but the more I thought about it, the more it gnawed at me. My trust, once unshakable, was beginning to fray at the edges. I felt the space between us grow, and it wasn't just the music anymore, it was everything. The evening passed in a blur. We made dinner together, like we always did, but it felt mechanical. There was no laughter, no easy conversation. I could tell she was trying, but something had shifted. I couldn't look at her the same way. The woman I had trusted, the woman I had shared everything with, now seemed like a stranger in so many ways. She was distant, hidden behind her own private world, a world I didn't belong to anymore. I wanted to ask her. I wanted to confront her about the songs, to demand to know why she had kept them a secret, but I was terrified of what the answer might be. If I asked, if I pushed her, would she admit to something more? Would she admit that she had been living a life I wasn't part of? Or would she try to deny it, to brush it off like everything else? I wasn't sure I could handle either. So I sat there, pretending, playing along as if nothing had changed, as if the cracks in our relationship weren't glaringly obvious. But they were. And no matter how much I wanted to ignore them, I knew I couldn't. That night, I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, the haunting melodies of those songs playing over and over in my mind. I couldn't escape them. I couldn't escape the feeling that something had shifted in our relationship, something that couldn't be undone. And as I drifted off to sleep, I knew that the next day, the next moment, would bring the confrontation I had been dreading. I barely slept that night, the hum of the city outside our window blending with the incessant loop of those songs in my mind. Each note, each word, carried the weight of something I wasn't prepared to face. I kept wondering if I was making a mountain out of a molehill. After all, it was just music, right? Just a few songs on a shared playlist. But as the hours dragged on, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was ignoring something bigger. Something deeper. The next morning, I watched Sarah as she went through her usual routine. There was something different about her today, an unease in the way she moved, a subtle nervousness I hadn't noticed before. I couldn't help but wonder if she was waiting for me to confront her, if she knew that I was trying to piece everything together in my head. But I didn't say anything. I couldn't. We sat down for breakfast, and the air between us was thick with unspoken words. The silence, which had always been comfortable before, now felt suffocating. She was looking at her phone, scrolling absent-mindedly, as I tried to pretend I wasn't burning with questions. Every few seconds, her eyes flicked up to meet mine, but each time, they quickly darted away. It was as if we were playing a game where neither of us knew the rules anymore. So, she said, breaking the silence, her voice forced, "What's on the agenda for today? Want to go explore the city?" Her attempt to act casual only made everything feel more awkward. It was as if she were trying to distract me, as if she was pretending nothing had changed when in reality, everything had. The playlist. The songs. The feeling I had that there was someone else in our relationship, someone I couldn't see, someone whose presence was now as real to me as the space between us. "Yeah, sure," I replied, but my voice lacked the usual enthusiasm. "We can head out in a bit." She smiled weakly and went back to scrolling through her phone, and I took that moment to clear the dishes. The task was automatic, a way to occupy my mind, but my thoughts kept returning to the songs. I had to know. I couldn't live with the uncertainty hanging over me. So, while she was distracted, I grabbed her phone, swiped to the Spotify app, and dug into our playlist again. The songs were still there, but now they felt more ominous, more like an accusation. I went back to the recently played section, trying to track down more clues. The love songs weren't just sporadic, they were regular. Some were repeated. And they weren't even songs I would have expected her to enjoy. Not that I thought I knew her music taste inside out, but these choices, there was a kind of emotional weight in them that felt foreign to what I thought we shared. I scrolled further, the uncertainty building in my chest with every song, and then I saw it, a message notification from the same unknown number I had seen in the past. I didn't open it immediately. I froze, staring at the screen, trying to figure out what the hell I was doing. I should have walked away. I should have put the phone down and walked out that door. But I couldn't. The need for answers, for closure, was too strong. I opened the message. The text was casual, almost flirtatious, and it confirmed what I had feared. I can't wait to see you again. Let's make it happen soon. Just tell me when you're free. It was a message meant for someone else. Someone she hadn't told me about. I didn't even need to read any further to understand the implications. My stomach dropped. I couldn't breathe. I closed her phone and put it back on the counter, trying to compose myself, trying to steady my hands. Just then, Sarah came into the kitchen. She looked at me, her expression unreadable. "Everything okay?" she asked, her voice pitched higher than usual, as if she was trying to hide her own nervousness. I didn't answer right away. I just stared at her, feeling the weight of the moment settle around us. The person I thought I knew wasn't standing in front of me. This woman was hiding something, and I wasn't sure I could look at her the same way again. "What's going on, Mark?" she asked again, a little more forcefully now. "You're acting weird. Did I say something wrong?" I tried to swallow the lump in my throat, but the words stuck. How could I confront her without exposing my own hurt, my own insecurities? How could I ask her what I needed to know without feeling like everything we had built together was crumbling? "Who's Ethan?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Her face went pale, and for a split second, I saw panic flicker in her eyes before she masked it with a forced smile. "What do you mean?" "The messages," I said, a slight edge creeping into my voice. "Who is Ethan? You've been talking to him a lot lately. Sending messages, listening to love songs, songs meant for someone else. Don't you think I deserve an explanation?" I could feel my pulse quickening, the air in the room growing thicker. Her mouth opened and closed, as if she couldn't find the right words. "Mark, it's not what you think. Ethan is a guy I met at work. We've been working on a project together, and I think maybe I've started to get too comfortable. It's nothing like you think." She was stumbling over her words, the excuses spilling out too quickly. It wasn't convincing. I shook my head. "No. This isn't about a project. This isn't just casual work talk. I've seen how you've been with him. I've heard the messages, I've seen the way you've been hiding things. You've been lying to me, Sarah. And that's not okay." Her eyes began to well up, and she reached out for me, but I stepped back, feeling a deep ache in my chest. "Please, just listen to me," she pleaded. "I've made mistakes. I shouldn't have kept things from you. I'm sorry. But I swear, Ethan is just a friend. I've been going through some stuff, Mark, and I thought I could confide in him. I didn't mean for it to go this far." I took a deep breath, trying to steady my shaking hands. "So you've been lying to me, hiding things behind my back. Is that what this is about? And you thought I wouldn't notice?" Her face crumpled as she finally broke down, tears spilling down her face. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't want to lose you." I stood there, feeling the weight of her words, the burden of this betrayal sinking into my bones. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to hold on to the idea of the woman I had loved, the woman I thought I knew. But the truth was staring me in the face, and I wasn't sure I could look at her the same way anymore. "You've been lying to me for how long, Sarah?" My voice cracked as the pain hit harder. "How long has this been going on? And why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you trust me enough to be honest?" She looked up at me, her eyes filled with remorse, and all I saw was a person I no longer recognized. "I'm so sorry. I never meant to hurt you. I swear, I'll do anything to make this right. Please don't leave me." But as her words filled the air, they felt empty. The damage was already done. The music, the messages, the secrecy, they had created a divide between us that I wasn't sure we could cross. "I don't know if I can fix this, Sarah," I whispered, the words barely escaping my lips. "I don't know if I can trust you again." Her sobs filled the room, but I couldn't bring myself to comfort her. The trust we once shared was gone, replaced by this awful, unspoken truth that neither of us could deny. And in that moment, I realized that the road ahead would be harder than I ever imagined. Whether or not we could rebuild was still uncertain, but one thing was clear: nothing would ever be the same again. The next few days were a blur, filled with uncertainty, tension, and conversations that never seemed to end. We spent our time in the same space, physically close, but emotionally miles apart. Sarah tried to apologize, tried to make amends, but her words always felt like they were coming from a place too distant, too rehearsed. I could see the guilt in her eyes, but I wasn't sure it was enough to rebuild what had been broken. The songs on our playlist, the ones I couldn't stop thinking about, echoed in my mind like a haunting reminder of the betrayal that had shifted everything between us. Every morning, I woke up next to her, but it felt like I was waking up to a stranger. The warmth that had once filled our mornings was now replaced with a cold, uneasy silence. I couldn't stop wondering how long this had been going on. How long had she been hiding this from me? Why hadn't she trusted me enough to be honest? I wanted to forgive her. I wanted to believe that this was a mistake, that we could move past it. But every time I looked at her, the doubt crept in like a creeping vine, twisting around everything I thought I knew about us. One night, after dinner, she sat down across from me at the kitchen table, her hands fidgeting with the napkin in front of her. Her face was pale, and I could see the exhaustion in her eyes. I knew she was still trying to make up for the distance between us, still trying to rebuild the trust she had shattered. But I couldn't escape the feeling that no matter how hard she tried, things had already changed. Something inside me had broken, and I wasn't sure if I could put the pieces back together. "I know you're still upset with me," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "And I don't blame you for being angry. I deserve that. But I need you to know that I love you. And I never wanted to hurt you." I met her gaze, trying to push aside the wall of emotion that had been building between us. "I know you didn't mean to hurt me, Sarah," I said softly. "But it's not just about what you did. It's about everything you didn't say. Everything you kept from me." I paused, trying to find the right words, but they came out sounding hollow, empty. "You've been lying to me for so long, and I don't know how to get past that." Her eyes filled with tears again, and she reached across the table, her hand trembling as she touched mine. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry for all the lies. I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't know how to admit that I had let something else take hold of me, that I had been seeking comfort in someone else when I should have been turning to you. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I'm begging you to let me try. I can't undo the past, but I can fight for our future. Please don't give up on me." Her words were desperate, and I could see the sincerity in her eyes. But they didn't make the pain go away. I still couldn't erase the image of her listening to those songs, of the man's voice filling the spaces between us. I couldn't forget the feeling of betrayal, the sense that the woman I thought I knew had been keeping something from me, a part of her life that was separate from ours. The hurt wasn't just about the music or the texts. It was about everything that came after, everything that made me question whether our entire relationship had been built on a foundation of half-truths. "I want to believe you, Sarah," I said finally, my voice barely above a whisper. "I really do. But I don't know how. I don't know if I can trust you again. I don't know if we can ever go back to what we had." She closed her eyes and took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. When she opened them again, there was something raw in her expression, vulnerable, but determined. "I'm not asking you to forget, Mark. I know I don't deserve your trust right now, but I'm asking for a chance to prove that I can be the person you believed in. I don't want to lose you." The words hung in the air between us, heavy with the weight of everything we had shared and everything we had lost. I could see how much she wanted to fix this, how much she was willing to fight for us. But it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough to erase the doubt, the sense that something was missing now. Something fundamental. I couldn't go on pretending that everything was fine, that we could just pick up where we left off. It was like trying to put together a puzzle when half the pieces were gone. The picture we had painted was incomplete. I pulled my hand away from hers, the loss of contact feeling like a quiet admission that things had changed. "I don't know if we can fix this, Sarah," I said, my voice tight. "I don't know if I can move past what you've done." She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I understand," she whispered. "I really do. I'll do whatever it takes to show you that I'm committed to making things right. But if you can't find it in your heart to forgive me, I'll accept that. I just need you to know that I love you. And I'll keep trying, even if it means waiting until you're ready." Her words, though full of regret, only deepened the ache inside me. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to hold on to the hope that we could rebuild from this, that we could find our way back to each other. But the truth was, I didn't know how. I didn't know if we could. That night, as I lay in bed beside her, I could feel the distance between us, stretching wider than it had ever been. Her breathing was steady, but I couldn't sleep. The thoughts swirled in my mind, each one more overwhelming than the last. I thought about the songs, about the love she had shared with someone else, someone who had come into her life while I was right there beside her. I thought about everything we had shared, everything we had built, and how easily it could all be destroyed. I wanted to sleep, to forget the ache in my chest, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw her listening to those songs, imagining her thoughts drifting away from me to him. I couldn't escape the images. The betrayal wasn't just about a few secret messages, it was about everything that had changed in the space between us. The next morning, she was quiet. She had made breakfast, but the air between us felt so strained I could barely bring myself to eat. We sat there, both trying to act like everything was normal, but everything had shifted. I could see the uncertainty in her eyes, the same uncertainty that filled my chest. We had reached a breaking point, and I wasn't sure if either of us was strong enough to fix it. I think I need some time, I said, my voice low. I need to think. I need to figure out what I want, what I need. And right now, I don't have any answers. I can't make a decision like this in the middle of all this mess. She nodded, her face falling, but I could see the understanding there. I understand, Mark. I'll give you the space you need. I'll wait. But please know that I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere. I walked away from the table, needing the distance. I needed to clear my head, to stop drowning in the confusion, the hurt. I didn't know what would happen next, whether I would find it in my heart to forgive her or if this was the end of the road. But I knew one thing for sure, our relationship would never be the same again. The songs, the words, the doubts, they had changed everything. Now, I had to figure out whether we could rebuild, or if we were both too broken to fix.